Last few days left of 2020, all eyes and hopes are on the year ahead after a totally unexpected 7 to 9% GDP contraction this year. A quick CNBC TV18 poll shows that economists expect a 10 to 11% rebound in GDP in FY22. But this double-digit growth will not even bring the Indian economy to the same size it was at the end of FY20, that is the GDP size in March of this year. What thereafter? Do we maintain a 6% growth momentum, or will it be more like the 5% that Morgan Stanley's Ruchir Sharma recently spoke about? Also, what about the other macros in FY22? Will inflation remain subdued as the November numbers seem to indicate? Will credit grow? Will that be the fuel of growth? And what will be the space left for fiscal and monetary policy? Also, more important, will the external world be a drag or will it be a support? For all this, welcome to our show, Outlook 2021. We have four marquee economists to answer all our questions on the economy. Sudipto Mundal, formerly member of the Finance Commission and now with the NCAER. Samiran Chakrabarti, Chief Economist at Citi India. Sonal Verma, the Chief Economist at Nomura. Pranjal Bhandari, the Chief Economist at HSBC India. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. Well, as I said, our quick poll is indicating that most economists are expecting a 10 to 11% GDP growth for the next year, FY22. But Samiran, you're the only person who has put out a thorough report. So if you can tell us what will be the propellers for growth? Will it be capex, private consumption, rural, urban, what?
So, Lata, the way we are looking at things is that in the first part of the year, it's the consumption which will have to increase and give the thrust to growth. And this consumption primarily is going to come from, in our view, some form of a forced savings which has happened in the economy, where the actual decline in wages have been much lower than the decline in overall consumption. So that forced savings will give some consumption impetus in the early part of the year. Once that consumption comes into play and supported by vaccine, etc., then in the second half of the year, we could see some improvement in private capex, because the preconditions for private capex, which is low interest rate, relatively higher profitability for companies, the financial leverage of the companies coming down, the thrust from government policies towards these PLI schemes, maybe a bit of the supply chain shift from China. So all these factors can drive private capex in the latter part of the year. So altogether, we think that a 11% GDP growth for FY22 is in the realm of possibilities. But I must add one word of caution, which is that this forecast presumes that the sequential momentum in growth in FY22 will be lower than even what it was in FY20. So the pace of growth is going to be much lower. It's a year-over-year number which will look better, partly because of the base effect.
Oh, that caution is well taken. We must not run away with our hopes simply because we have this 10 to 11% annual growth, year-on-year growth next year. But, you know, I also noted in your report two things which I wasn't aware of, that wage bill of listed companies actually grew in both Q1 and Q2. We were under the impression that layoffs may have shrunk that bill. You also point out that rural wages have grown. So that again would be a positive, which perhaps is not widely understood. But Sonal, let me come to you on how will the world help or harm growth in India?
In the very near term, next quarter or so, it's more potentially a harm. But as we look out into FY22, it looks like that's going to be a source of support.
Okay.
Very near term, I mean, the virus cases we are seeing in the developed world, we think there is a risk of a double dip both in Europe and US. So that's a near term headwind potentially for India. But I think taking a more big picture view into FY22, it does look like global growth should be a big tailwind. In 2020, global GDP growth on our estimates contracted by about 3.6%. 2021, we're looking at a rebound to about 5.7%. And even in 2022 calendar year, we are still expecting a plus 4% growth. One big advantage that developed economies have is the pre-ordering of vaccines. So for most of DM world, we think that sort of herd immunity and bulk of the population will be inoculated by the second quarter of 2021. So the fear factor that is currently causing consumption to be weak, because if you look at the supply side and goods side of the economy, things have more or less normalized everywhere. It's really the services and the consumption side where, because of the fear factor, things are still subdued. So as the DM world moves towards greater inoculation by mid of 2021, that should actually be a source of a significant pickup in global demand. So we are actually looking at a synchronized global recovery in the second half of 2021.
My next question is really to what will be the red flags. Dr. Mundal, the informal sector still has taken a very bad hit. And although Samiran's data is showing that formal sector's wage has seen a growth, are we going to see a shrinking of aggregate demand, because 1 year of hit can be very severe for many people?
I must say I haven't looked at Shamiran's numbers. But one thing is the absolute growth in the wage bill. The other is the relative share of wages and, if you will, micro enterprise, which are really self-employed type wage workers, against the growth of profits. And if that income distribution has shifted against the lower income, groups, wage earners and micro enterprises and so on in favor of profits, then your propensity to consume is obviously come down. I always look at consumption not as an autonomous factor, but as something that is a derived factor. In developing countries, wealth effects and so on are small. So it's really consumption is a factor of income. The real autonomous drivers are things like government expenditure, investment expenditure, and the external sector. I completely agree with Sonal that I think we are going to get a positive push from the rest of the world, mainly because our shock has been relatively much stronger compared to our trade partners. And also, if you look at the Q2 figures, actually investment is beginning to look up a little bit. So I'm quite hopeful that these drivers will help push growth. I think Shamiran's reference to 11% is very reasonable. I have to caution that, with high frequency indicators, the further down time, further you go ahead in time, the less reliable they become. And if you are using high frequency to look at what will be the growth rate in 2021, you're almost in a zone of guessing. But that being said, I completely agree. I was, it will be double digit, but probably not much more than 11%. And that's a very good growth rate. Maybe we come back to it later. I have some thoughts on the fiscal part, but we can talk about that later.
Oh, yes, sure, sir. No, I'm actually straight away coming to it. Pranjal, I'm not coming to you with growth questions. I want to come to you with the inflation question. The latest number is extremely encouraging that we appear to have peaked off. But, the base again becomes adverse when we get to the first quarter, when we come to February, March. But more importantly, commodity prices are giving us a sense that, the global impulses will actually pull up. Even softs, even corn and wheat are rising in global markets. So can inflation put a spanner in the sense that, the Reserve Bank may not be able to be very benign, may not be able to keep liquidity plentiful?
Yes, thank you, Lata. You asked about red flags, and I think inflation is the biggest red flag out there. Now, yesterday's number was benign, and it's going to fall further. I think by January we'll have CPI inflation at 5, but my worry is that by March it will become 6 again as the favorable base goes. In FY21, the main driver of inflation was the informal sector disruption. The informal sector produces a lot of essentials, food, clothing, and all of that. And there was a lot of disruption there, and demand hadn't really fallen. I think the driver of inflation in the next fiscal year, FY22, will be different. My worry is that we are going to have to grapple with very high services inflation. Recall between 2007 and 11, services inflation had gone up very sharply, and it had become very sticky and very, very difficult to bring it down. And that was one of the reasons we moved from WPI to CPI inflation targeting, because CPI actually included services. My worry is that once the vaccine is there and a lot of people start consuming high-touch services, then there will be a huge pent-up demand coming up. There's also a link with inequality. As you've mentioned, that large firms are doing better than small firms. But small firms in the unorganized sector employ about 85 to 90% of India's labor force. And because fiscal support has not been very big, we have this huge inequality where the rich are getting richer. Unfortunately or fortunately, the rich consume a lot of services. So that's another reason why, services could see a big increase next year, and we could be grappling with pretty high services inflation, which becomes sticky. So this is a red flag I think we should think about.
Okay. All right. I have to take a break. But my bigger, topic for the discussion today is what will be the post-FY22 growth? I mean, FY22 looks good because of the base. Are we going to be able to maintain head above water? In our case, it will be 6%. Or are we going to slide into 5% because we have killed aggregate demand for a whole host of reasons in the past few years? That question, what is the secular Indian growth rate that we can expect over the next 2 or 3 years? To my guests after this break. Our special show, Outlook 2021, where we are trying to guess how the economy and its macros will shape up in the upcoming year. We've been speaking with 4 marquee economists, Pranjul Bhandari, Samiran Chakrabarti, Sonal Verma, and Dr. Sudipta Mundal. Before going to the break, we all agreed, or rather they all agreed, that about 10 to 11% growth in FY22 is possible, but that still will not bring us to the size of the economy as of March 31st, 2020. That's not a very good base. So can we maintain a 6% growth from that base is the question to my guests. Samiran, what's your sense? Will we be able to maintain that 6% growth? And I'm asking you, now I want to get the 2003 comparison. 2003 to 2008 saw a fairly good global as well as Indian growth, with many countries having near double-digit growth. Are some ingredients of that in place so that we can expect both a globally propelled 6-7% growth?
In terms of permanent scarring from the virus, I think there are 3-4 reasons why India has been less impacted. One is, as we were discussing, labor market might be less disrupted than we expected. Financial sector asset quality is also less impacted. And there are some peculiarities in our MSME structure because of which even the MSMEs are probably less impacted than we thought. And what we call the play sectors in the economy, the travel, recreation, hospitality, etc., the share of the play sectors for India is only 10-15% in its GDP, much lower than other countries. Yes. That's why the overall COVID impact on a permanent sense on the economy might be less than what we had feared in the beginning of the pandemic. And now to the second part, which is about the structural issues connected with our growth. And we have always believed that it's investment and productivity which drives longer-term growth. And we had estimated that about 10% plus investment growth and 3% plus productivity growth is required to give you a 8% GDP growth. Now, if we are talking about a 6% post-pandemic potential growth, then these numbers can be scaled down a bit also. Now, the question is that as we were discussing that there were some tailwinds to private capex that we are starting to see, both from domestic side as well as from global side that Sonal was mentioning. So if those two tailwinds can drive your private capex and you get about 8 to 10% investment growth on a sustained basis. And if the government is able to continue with the kind of structural reforms that have been initiated now, then maybe even the productivity growth reaches closer to that 3% mark. Then it's not inconceivable to believe that 6% potential growth can be maintained even in the post-pandemic world.
Samira, you yourself point out in your analysis that private final consumption expenditure had fallen to a low of 5.3 in FY20 itself, before the pandemic. So we were already seeing a slowing down of the pace of consumption. So, Dr. Mundal, that point, can consumption be scarred to the extent that we may be already in a situation where growth cannot go at 6%, it's more likely 5%?
Yeah, actually, I will split that question into two parts. One is the domestic drivers and the other is the external. So I think there's a significant difference between the two. As far as the domestic one is concerned, as you just pointed out, we were already, gliding down to lower and lower growth rates even before the pandemic hit. The pandemic having hit, now we are in a boosting effect period. You're getting a very strong return. You will see this. This is, of course, in a quarterly basis, but in an annual basis also, as we are all saying, we are going to see a rapid, high growth of 10, 11% next year. But once we have caught up with the 1920 output level, in other words, this boosting effect is over, I think you're going to see much shallower growth.
Okay. And no, my fear also is that the government strategy via PLI is trying to lean on manufacturing, which per se is not a great employment generator. So will that also crimp aggregate demand if you're not going to create enough jobs?
Yeah, I know a lot of announcements have been made and there's an announcement effect, but in terms of real action on the ground, I frankly don't expect a great deal from these reform announcements. But unless those actually become very effective, the domestic drivers are not going to get us to 6%, certainly not beyond. If anything, will be lower than that 5.8% trend growth rate, which we were getting before the pandemic hit.
Okay.
However, that's the second part I was mentioning. It depends a lot on what happens globally.
Okay.
If there really is a global upsurge of growth, that could actually drive our exports and export-led growth in India beyond 6%. So my answer to you is very contingent. Nature of uncertainty is such that we cannot give sort of very firm answers. It is contingent on what happens to the global scenario.
Okay.
But I don't expect the domestic, drivers like reform and so on to get us across the 6% mark.
Okay. Well,
in the medium term.
Got that, sir. Sonal, I'm going to give you only 10 seconds to answer. What is your, guess on potential growth, whether we will maintain a 6% plus growth beyond FY22? The bigger question I want is the other macros on FY22, in FY21. Are you expecting in calendar 21 inflation and therefore any monetary space?
Sure, Lata. I mean, in terms of the potential growth, I think on average about 6% over the next 3 years, if that's the definition of medium term, I think is doable. Like pre-pandemic, we were actually doing closer to 6.5% to 7%. So if there isn't a big global shock, I think even assuming that the pandemic leads to a further slowdown in potential growth, which I think will happen because of the balance sheet effects, that still should ensure 6% on average for the next 3 years. On average, we are expecting inflation to be lower. So about 4.8% versus, I think, close to 6% 6.8% in 2020. But I think the drivers of inflation are clearly changing. So while some of the volatile food-based items are coming off now, as Pranjul was mentioning, actually outside of vegetables, there is a broader pickup in food prices, both in India as well as globally. And I think if we are right with the synchronized global recovery in the second half of the year, and China are driving a lot of this with investment in infrastructure and manufacturing investment, then the commodity price pressures will also be there. So I think from an input cost side, pressures do seem to be on the higher side. And on the services side, the need to repair the balance sheet also implies a risk of higher prices. So I think the headlines might look lower than last year, but in terms of the driver of inflation, I think is sort of going to change in our view from more supply side to the cost push inflation, leading to some pass through to end consumers. So the nature of inflation will change.
Pranjul, you get only 10 seconds for what is your potential growth. More importantly, do you think we have to worry about the currency at all? Do you think that worry is gone for good, at least for the next 2-3 years?
Right. So on potential growth, it was already sliding before the virus. On the eve of the pandemic, we estimate it at 6%. Through the pandemic, it would have fallen by 1 percentage point to 5%. In our view, led by two things. One is stress in the banking sector, which is not completely visible now, but will be over the next couple of years, as has happened in previous crises as well. And second is the rise in inequality. Having said that, with all the reforms that the government is trying to do, this 5% number can be lifted back up if the reforms are properly implemented.
Okay.
Coming to your current account and currency question, we think that the current account surplus, this year was a large surplus. The current account will go into balance the next year. We already saw, when you look at the trade deficit monthly numbers, that in the quarter ending September, it was $5 billion a month, and then suddenly shot to almost $10 billion in the last 3 days. So before you know, the trade deficit can actually really widen, particularly if you think you're going to have very high growth in the next fiscal year. So my sense is that the BOP surplus will not be as threatening as it was this year. The current account deficit will rise, or at least go into balance. The surplus won't be there. So even if the capital inflows remain strong, our BOP surplus will be half in FY22 compared to what it was in FY21. So not too much pressure on the currency. I expect it to be range bound in the 72 to 74 sort of range.
Okay. So we can take liberties with both liquidity and inflation because the external threat at least is not there. There's no destabilizing factor from the external side that, high inflation and high liquidity can lead to a run on the rupee. That is simply not in the picture. So merely to conclude, I'm sorry I didn't give you enough time, but there is a consensus that next year we will be able to do double-digit 10 or 11% growth. But that merely replaces what we lost this time. Thereafter is the bigger question whether the growth is scarred for the longer time. I think we have a almost evenly divided house over here. Sonal is most optimistic that we should be able to manage 6%. Pranjul and Dr. Mundal are much less confident and believe that there has been some longer term scarring, and the slowing was there even before we went into the pandemic. And Samiran is a little ambivalent, depends on other external factors. So it much depends on how the economy responds in terms of policy and in terms of what are the global impulses. But for next year at least, we shouldn't worry too much about India's macros. That's the opinion coming from our economists. Thank you very much for watching the first of our episodes on Outlook 2021.